Why would I hire you?
Thank you. This is so fun. So, as I said earlier, having the gift of
I hope
being
we're
with.
having fun. We've been a little too serious. We like to drink wine. We actually talked about it. It's only a lot. It was 11 o'clock in the morning when we started. We're like, we should be drinking wine, right? So next time we are going to be
Next
drinking
time.
wine. Michelle, welcome. Episode number 1 of my leadership podcast. I'm super excited to have you here with me today. And as I kind of prepped you before we got on, we're going to talk about leadership stories. And
Yeah.
I'm going to have you walk me through your leadership journey. But I want to start by talking about like your and my history together, because we have
Yeah.
known each other for how many years? 30?
Almost 30.
30 years. Started our career together as clinical social workers at what, 24?
Yeah.
Like charities. Super funny stories we probably should not post out on social media, since we were family therapists trying to help families through some things. But yeah, we've known each other and we've each had a different leadership journey for sure.
Yes, absolutely. It's crazy to think that it's almost 30 years.
I know. And we kind of went like this and then we went like this and then we came back together, right? So,
Yes.
because we were not connected for 15, 10, 15 years. Just kind of
Yeah, I
flipped in and out.
yeah. Yeah, and even wilder was the fact that we were both in the same grad class
Oh, yes.
the year we graduated, but didn't really interact, but then
Mhm.
got hired on the same day and have just been connected. And like you said, even though like we've had some distance in between us,
Mhm.
anytime we get back together, it's like September 7th, 1995.
Is that when we started our job?
It is.
What was it? September 7th,
September
1995?
7th.
You amaze me what you remember. That was our first day at Catholic Charities.
Right.
Denise Krause, our savior,
Yes.
was our supervisor. I mean, I literally credit her with me being who I am today and having the
Yeah.
skills and understanding boundaries and working with clients, right? Like she was super good at
Yeah.
teaching just that basic stuff that you need to know to be a therapist. And then my now being a coach,
Yeah.
super important.
Yeah, I would say too, like about Denise in that way, that she was really good about recognizing who we were and where we were at in our
Mhm.
growth process, and like tolerant of either our wanting to move too quickly or not moving quick enough. But she always honored the pace that we were ready for. And I think that is critical as a coach to really recognize that with anybody that you're working with,
Yeah, right. Start where the
be where
clients
they're
are.
at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, she was very, I mean, we were seedlings, right? We were so green, little tiny seeds, and she kind of nurtured us. Oh my gosh, right? I mean, we
Yes.
certainly could have probably got fired a number of times for just
Yeah.
being off our
I
rockers.
think she was intrigued by us, and I think we inspired her too. I mean,
Mm,
she left shortly thereafter.
yeah, maybe that was our fault. I don't know. I don't know. Um, okay, so yeah, so you and I started together, went to graduate school at UB together, family therapists, our first career jobs back in 1995, September 7th, Catholic Charities. And then walk me through, because you stayed at Catholic Charities for how many years?
Almost 30 years.
Was it really? Okay. So you stayed there and you worked yourself up the leadership ranks there.
Yeah. It's interesting because I reflect a lot on that in terms of like being a leader. And I'm sure this is the same for you too, Dee. We never talked about it, but even when being in school, elementary school, secondary school, whatever they call it,
Mhm.
kind of just being like that natural born leader of kind of like just informally taking the lead on things. sports, being a captain, things like that, moving into my first job at McDonald's and, being a manager. And so that has always been in me.
Hmm.
So as you said, just so I was there technically 28 years employed, but I started out as a student intern. So it was about 29 years that I was committed to the organization and navigating myself through those different roles, responsibilities, positions. And it's interesting because I think it's one of those things that your greatest strengths can end up being your nemesis. So, like, I was always viewed as that reliable, team player, whatever. And I always ended up like making other people look good. But, so that was like, I was that attractive employee that,
Mhm.
like, oh, let's just keep promoting her. And that's kind of like the natural progression of you go to school, you go to high school, you go to college, you get your job, you just do what kind of like the norm is.
Mhm.
um so it took me a while to really get out of just going through the motion of what everybody says you should do or what is expected to do.
Yeah. You make I have not really thought about, like you said, we haven't talked about like reflecting on what we were like as kids and then how that translated into our career. I
Yeah.
guess I never really went back that far. I certainly have gone back and reflected on my life, but I was also that kid, super responsible. And I was always the kid that people came to for help, right? I
Yeah.
remember that from a very, very, very young age, right? Helping, I would always have my homework done, and then people would be like, "Oh, could you help me? Yours is done." I don't know, maybe they're cheating off me, but right, like I was always the kid. My parents never told me to do my homework.
Yeah.
I was always super responsible, and then would help people. And I remember different scenarios with relationships with my girlfriends and situations where people would get in trouble, and I was that person. I was always the
Yeah.
go-to. And then even
And being autonomous and
yeah,
independent.
yes,
um yeah.
super independent, right? My parents got divorced when I was young. And I remember getting myself and my sister up and off to school when I was 8. I started working when I was 10. Little tiny me pushing the lawnmower, right? The neighbor next door and weeding. And I'd go over and get my $5 when I was 10. And then I started, babysitting. And I've always worked, did something, right? I saved up
Yeah.
and got my own car a brand new car when I was 16 because I had saved up enough money to do that. And obviously now I'm an entrepreneur.
Right.
So I've followed that kind of journey my whole entire life. It's kind of come in and out of my consciousness, but I'm like, wow, okay, right. Ever since a young child, I was super independent and just driven.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to ask you that. I'm like, you probably had a lemonade stand, didn't you? Because that just that entrepreneurial spirit that you have, and obviously your dad, being a business owner, I'm sure you observed a lot of that
Yeah.
too.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it is interesting how we're wired when we don't even realize what we're
Hmm.
wired for.
Yeah, just got to pay attention.
Hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about because you were with Catholic Charities. That was like your main story, kind of the thread of your leadership journey. But then let's
Yeah.
kind of weave in being a woman in leadership. What
Hmm.
kind of, I guess I'm just like, what's been your experience? I mean, I certainly my journey's been different than yours. I've worked in the corporate world. I've been more entrepreneurial, and that's had different effects on me for sure. I very much had some of my career in a male dominated world back in early 2000s, right? When it was
Yeah.
much different than it is today. But talk to me about your experience as being a woman in leadership and at a high level. You were a CEO, Catholic Charities, right? You worked your way
Yeah.
up to the top of the ranks, worked directly with the CEO. So that was a big job for you.
Yeah, and I think the nature of human services in general tends to be more of a female dominated
Mm-hmm.
space. Um and again, like you just go through the natural progression of doing, 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 and At the time, my values and what was important to me really aligned with the organization and the services that we were providing, the impact that we were having. It was a good purpose for me to be there. And I felt well supported in the roles that I had been in some of those lower level leadership, mid management roles. Um, and then as I moved into more of the executive position and then needed to be in spaces and in conversations that were more relevant to that role, things became a little bit more clear to me around the gender inequities. Um, and that's where some of the friction started for me in terms of really needing to take a step back and not just keep going in that natural progression, but to really step back and look at what are my values, what's important to me, what are my priorities, and how well am I positioning myself in situations with people and activities that really support that. And that was a real eye opener for me.
Mm-hmm.
In having the permission to break away from what the natural progression is. Well, the next step typically would be you move into a CEO position, but really realizing I would not be able to do that in that particular space.
So, as you were talking about your experience, I was also reflecting on mine. And I remember in my first corporate job, and it was very male dominated. The culture of the organization, 'cause you brought up values, and that's where I'm going to go with this. The culture was very kind of militaristic. It was very rote, like you followed the line, you toed the line, you drank the Kool-Aid, and you did not veer off the path.
Right, right.
And that did not jive with my values. And I think similar to me, when you work with clients, you probably talk about, I know I do all the time, your values and your purpose must be in alignment with what you do every single day in the culture of the organization or the business that you choose to work with, because you won't be aligned personally or professionally if the values don't align. And so
Right.
my experience, at many levels, it did not align with my values. And then as I moved through my career, I started to align with people and organizations that were similar to my values. And all of a sudden, everything fell into place.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I would say now in my current experience that I don't even think about being a woman in my role at all. And
Yeah.
new experience that I'm going to have moving into this year, 2024, I am one of the only women who sits at a table with probably 12 male executives. And I don't even think about it.
Yeah.
It is interesting how, when you find that alignment of values and purpose and passion, some of that stuff kind of falls away. At least it does for me. I don't know if that's how everyone experiences it, but um,
Yeah. And I think there's recognizing your own values and priorities and the alignment in the spaces and with the people that you are, um and and to also feel, as social workers, we've made a commitment around advocacy, and so really trying to advocate for more of that gender equity. Um and when I felt like this is just like a surface thing, this is not really an investment around it, just kind of like check the box around equity.
mhm,
I was like, it's really disturbing. I mean, there were so many things that I tried to mobilize to give more recognition to women, that just it wasn't being heard and supported. And
mhm,
so that's when I said, okay, I've done as much as I can to try to move this in this direction, and it's not going there. So why am I going to continue to be in a space where I feel frustrated? And it started to take a toll on me, uh, emotionally. That was not so in the forefront of my mind, but it was definitely sitting physically. So all my emotions were just being absorbed in my body, and Then I started to experience burnout and
Mhm.
resentment and anger, and like not even wanting to be in the same room as some of these men because I couldn't even tolerate them talking. um, so it was like, okay, I need to do something different for me. And it gave me a moment to really sit back and look at what truly are my values, what are my priorities, what is that purpose that I want to have, what is the impact that I want to have, um, and how do I make those decisions around where I'm doing it, and I have the support and the resources to do it. And I will say, Dee, that even though there were those times where we had those like gaps in times of seeing each other, um, you always, well, similar to what we were talking about, Denise, at the beginning, you were always that person who would check in and is that really what you want to be doing? And you honored where I was at the time, but
Mhm.
always saw so much more for me and would verbalize that. And so, like knowing who are your people, who are your mentors, who are your coaches, who, to me, you're a sponsor. You give me opportunities to fulfill my purpose,
Mhm.
by this podcast, by opportunities that might come to your attention that you pass on to me. Those are the things we need as women, is to be aware of who are the people that are going to help amplify and elevate us, and
Yeah.
not beat us down or make us question what we're capable of.
Yeah. You just gave there's so much juicy stuff in what you just said.
All
um
right.
first self-awareness, right?
Yep.
So these are some of the things I preach in my coaching practice when I work with people, like values and then self-awareness, like being so aware of your physical self, right? Your spiritual self, your mental self, because your body will tell you things. Your mind is going to kind of trick you sometimes, but your body will tell you things.
Yeah.
And you said physically you were starting to feel things, starting to feel burnt out because your values were not in alignment. So we always need, and this goes for men and women, we always need to be paying attention, because we can stay the course like, oh my gosh, I have great benefits, oh my gosh, my paycheck is so great. Well, that is the complete wrong reason to stay the course, because by the time you
Right.
retire or get to whatever the end is for you, you're going to feel like major shit. You're going to be burnt out. You're going to be worn
Mm-hmm.
out, and you're just going to just collapse at the finish line. Whereas if you pay attention to the signs, your body and your spiritual self will guide you. And so when we hit those obstacles, like that was an obstacle for you. You had finished that part of your journey and you just kept bumping and bumping and bumping. And you're like, oh my God. And you and I are probably a little bit stubborn, similarly, like, no, I can do this. Like, I got this. I can figure this out. I can readjust myself to get somewhere with that. I mean, I certainly have been on that journey myself many, many times. But what I have learned and what I'm always wanting to help people to understand is when you keep hitting the same obstacle over and over and over, it's your spirit guides, it's God, it's the universe, it's whatever you believe in, it's redirecting you, right? So is every time you hit the same obstacle over and over, you have to pull back, reflect, which I think you have done, and say, okay, what's next for me? What am I not seeing in this particular situation that I can, like, I need to be looking somewhere else? Because if I just keep looking here, I keep coming up against challenges. Because if you're in
Mm-hmm.
alignment, you're within your purpose, you're within your passion, you have self awareness, your values are in alignment, it will be like flow. It will just
Mm-hmm.
happen. And I'm not saying you won't have obstacles and struggles and adversity, you will, but it won't be so hard every single day.
Yeah.
Um, and then you can have greater impact, like you said, right? When you are
Mm-hmm.
in alignment with your truth and your true north, you're going to be able to just guide people with ease. And I think you're a healer, right? You're a spiritual healer. You're a mental, physical, emotional healer. That's what we signed up for, right? We're clinical social workers. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
whatever we do is going to have a healing thread, a supportive thread, a mentoring thread, whatever it is, holding
Yeah.
people up. So love
Yeah.
all that. One other thing I want to talk about is why. Like, do you know what your why is? I know it can be a deep question because that is something else I try and encourage my clients to think about is like, what is your why? Why do you choose
Hmm.
what you do every single day? Do you know?
Yeah, it's so funny because we are so much alike in terms of like the work that I do and with counseling, coaching, and somewhat in terms of consulting, but asking that very question and digging deeper. And I always tell people up front, like, I'm going to ask you a why, you're going to give me the answer, and I'm probably going to say why again,
Mm-hmm.
um, because um, like even like as an example, working out, right? Some people will say, I want to work out because I want to feel healthier. But why do you want to feel healthier?
Mm-hmm.
And it's that keep digging deeper. So for me, it took me a bit in my own reflection. And I know I shared this with you earlier in the year when I decided to make this career pivot, that I knew I've always wanted to have an impact to improve the lives of others, and what I would say is like well-being, and so it started off doing direct work with clients, and then I kept saying I want to expand my sphere of influence. I want to have a greater touch, a wider, more expansive touch, and continue to have that influence, but in different ways. And so I always felt like what I was doing was aligned in that way and it would make sense to me. So when I decided I needed to make this pivot, I also wanted to make sure I was doing it in a way that was kind of aligned with like a personal SWOT. What are my strengths and how do I build from those strengths? And then also taking a look at opportunities and threats and weaknesses and all that. And so that's where I landed with I need to really take a look at who am I? This is who I am as a leader. I've got
Mm-hmm.
another 10, 15 years. Um, is it worth me investing in trying to be somebody different or something different, or do I just strengthen the strengths that I have and find different ways to apply them? So my why really became wanting to develop people, use my strategies, experience. I have a gift because you have a gift because we're licensed clinical social workers,
Mm-hmm.
but we also have this executive leadership experience. And so to be able to pair the two of those, it gave me opportunity to think about how do I take the gifts of my experience, my credentials, with my innate strengths and desires to convene people, connect people, develop people, be very strategic.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I landed with being able to then serve as a coach, as a counselor, and consultant so that I can continue to have that
Yeah.
expanded sphere of influence with different populations, and the fact that I can do things telehealth now or video even broader than Western New York.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like you said at the beginning of what you were just talking about, your and my why are very similar. So my why is I want to give people an experience that changes their life in some way and helps them to achieve their greatness. Because people forget their greatness. And you had said
Right,
about women, like women don't typically support other women, right? We for whatever reason, we can tend to be catty and like look at each other from the side eye about, oh, is she pretty? Is she smart? Is she successful? But I think one of the things that you and I, for whatever reason, do very different is love to hold other women up. And
yeah,
you certainly have supported me and I have supported you. And I have tried to do that with many women in my life and help each other to be successful because it is hard enough on so many
right,
levels and layer of life. Like, let's just be kind to each other and support each other and help each other to achieve our greatness because it only makes us all better.
right,
And I believe that on so many levels of our lives, right? We all get stuck in the ego and the protective natures of the ego. And we forget our gifts and we forget our true talents and we forget who we are from our heart and our intuition. And that is what
hmm,
connects us and helps us
yeah,
inspire and support each other, because then we're all in it together. Whereas when the
Yeah.
ego is involved, we pull apart. And the natural tendency for human beings is connection, not separation. We
Yeah.
I feel like we fight that on so many levels, whether it's personally, professionally, wherever, right? We're always like trying to protect ourselves, the ego, which is a normal defense, right? Based on experience. But as soon as we can trust who we are and what we bring, I think all that kind of fades away. And you're like, here I am. How can I help you?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, and I do think, going back to the point around the gender, in society in general, there has been, um, just basic visuals, messaging for
mhm,
women has traditionally been more deficit focused. Like, if you don't measure up to this size, if you don't measure up to this
yeah.
title, if you don't measure up, there's like this innate something is wrong with you.
Mhm.
And it's difficult, it can be challenging for women to be open and honest, uh first of all with themselves, secondly out loud with somebody else,
Yeah.
um because there's this cloud that's hanging over, that this negative cognition, like, I'm not adequate, I
Yeah.
don't measure up, and so if I say this out loud, um it's reinforcing what I already believe. And if we don't have people around us that we can trust and support us to really see the reframe of things, it it can be damaging, in context of the other messaging that they might be getting. So that's just as a person, and
Yeah.
then you add in their roles. When you and I started, we started working with families that were involved with child welfare because of child abuse or neglect
Yeah.
circumstances. And, it would bother both of us when we would go to family court and we would see how people were talking to the people we were working with, that we'd worked hard to build relationships with.
Yeah.
And then just like the ancillary conversations that were happening in the waiting room, like there's no respect and no dignity that
Yeah.
was offered to people. And so people come with these like beliefs about themselves and then expose themselves in different situations that only reinforce it. It's very discouraging. So having women like us and other women who've supported us who are more strengths based and asset focused
Hmm.
really makes a difference. It's interesting because some of the people that I work with, it's so ingrained in me now to have this strengths based solution focused approach and lens to things, that it's like an aha moment for many of the people that I work with.
Yeah.
And maybe the same
That
for
way.
you too.
Hmm. People always think about what's wrong and what's not going to go right, rather than
Right.
saying, well, what is working right? Like, how can it? I mean, you bring so much talent and natural born gift to the world, right? Like, so many gifts, and people just don't even pay attention. If you ask people, like, what are your strengths? A lot of times they can't give you a clear answer. Oh, I'm a good communicator and I can connect with people.
Right.
Okay, well, that doesn't tell me anything about you. Like, let's talk about you.
Hmm.
Can't even write a paragraph about themselves, right? It's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't know. Well, if you don't know who you are, how is anyone else going to know who you are, right?
Yeah.
So we have a few more minutes, but I have two things for you. I want you to give our audience, whoever might be watching this, one like kind of takeaway. Like, what's one thing that you would want either women in leadership or just general people in leadership roles to kind of know about the journey?
I would say that it's really critical, which, as we're talking, our approach in our work, in our mission, is very aligned around purpose and harmony. So when
Mm-hmm.
I say purpose, having very clear sense of what your values are.
Sure.
And so this goes for personal and professional. So when we know what our values are, we know what our priorities are. That's like the heady part of it all.
Mhm.
Being very purposeful. Um, and so you use it as your guiding star to make decisions around what you'll do personally or what you'll do professionally. The
Mhm.
harmony comes in in two ways. One is the harmony within your own personal and harmony within your professional, and then you have the harmony between the two.
Yeah.
Because that's where I got lost. I was giving so much to my professional that I wasn't giving enough credence to the personal, and making that shift has been such a lift for me. Um, but the harmony is really driven by, okay, so this is what's important to me as your foundation, and then how are you going to make decisions that will support you being able to live in alignment with those core values and priorities. So who are the people? If it's, professional, what kind of trainings do I want to participate in, or how do I take advantage of what already exists in my natural setting so I'm not adding something else to my plate.
Yeah.
um, the mentoring, identifying people informally or formally to serve as a mentor is so key, to have somebody to bounce things off of.
Yeah.
um, the networking is huge in terms of, the more you, for example, on LinkedIn, you connect with people and you get a sense of who are people that seem to be have similar drive. How do you learn more about them? What did it take for them to get to be where they're at? Being visible so that people can see you in person or digitally. Um, Coaches can be super helpful. It's really critical for us to do that self awareness, that introspection, but sometimes we can get in our own minds and go down a rabbit hole, and have a limited perspective on things. So, having a coach who can guide us, who can support us, who can hold us accountable,
Hmm.
is super helpful. Um, and always, I would say, like, always looking at the decisions that you make to allocate your time and energy. Make sure you are the priority behind that. Yes, it may benefit the place in which you're working or the people that you're working with, but always think about, what can I take with me when I'm no longer in this place or in this position, because it's an investment, so you're kind of cultivating your own inventory of expertise and resources, so that as your purpose becomes clearer and you start to make decisions, you've already got that ammo to drive that passion.
Yeah. So for me, it would be start with your why, get clear on your values, and understand your true purpose about why you're doing what you're doing. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and then all those things that you added as well, like the mentorship, the guidance, the coaching, the support, the
Yeah.
self awareness, all those things. Okay. So the final question, actually, it's not a question. I just want you to tell the audience like what you do. You're new into your entrepreneurship role, right?
Yeah.
And you started your own business, which is super exciting. And like, tell me what you do. Why would I hire you?
Yeah. Thank you. This is so fun. So, as I said earlier, having, the gift of
I hope
being
we're
this.
having fun. We've been a little too serious. We like to drink wine. We actually talked about it's only a lot. It was 11 o'clock in the morning when we started. We're like, we should be drinking wine, right? So next time we are going to be
Next
drinking
time.
wine.
Next time. Yeah, because that's how this whole idea even came about. We were hanging out, having a conversation like this
Yes.
in your living room, probably on the couches right behind you, and with a glass of wine in our hands, and said we should do this.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Way too
So
long ago, too, by the way. That was probably a year ago, right? Wasn't
it
it?
was.
It was a
It
while ago.
was.
Well, it
Yeah.
takes a minute to get to where you want to be. But
Yeah.
okay, go ahead. Tell us
We'll,
about
we'll do
your.
it again. Yeah, so pairing that experience, is a licensed clinical social worker, and just ingrained in who we are, in that desire to really improve the wellness, help others improve their own wellness.
Mhm.
So that has always been a part of me. Even while I was serving in an executive leadership role, I was still engaged in activities, working with families in that realm. But through that executive leadership and serving as a supervisor in mid management, had the opportunity to develop other people. So that's what became super clear to me, that I could marry the licensed clinical social worker, executive leadership experience, and offer coaching So I work with people around personal development, and they define what that is. For some, it's just their own personal wanting to improve themselves. For other,
Mhm.
it might be more career related. Um, and that is all by private pay. The beauty of being that licensed clinical social worker is that I can also provide counseling so that people can use their health insurance,
Yeah.
and I can still take a coaching approach to address the elevated stress, the burnout, the anxiety, the lack of ambition, the I don't know what the heck I'm doing or what I want to be doing.
Yeah.
As long as there's that medical necessity, they're able to use their health insurance copay.
So I know
And
you're.
so,
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I know that you're just getting started, but how would someone find you?
so a variety of ways. Psychology Today is a platform by which a lot of people look for a counselor. So I'm there. I'm on a couple of other platforms by which people search for counselors. I'm
Okay.
credentialed with here in Western New York. I'm credentialed with Independent Health in Highmark, so listed in their provider directory. Um, I'll send you the link to the Psychology Today as well, Dee.
Okay.
Um, so, and then for those who, it's not really a coaching um, intent or desire that they have. It's just maybe they're managing high levels of depression. So I'm working with people for a variety of reasons through the counseling, but still able to infuse the strengths based, asset focused approach to that work. And then serving as a consultant, I have the opportunity to work with organizations in strategic planning, organizational capacity building, um, team building, retreats, doing some interim coverage while program manager is off on maternity leave, doing some leadership training in April. So it's a really great way to take all of 3 decades of experience,
Yeah.
um, and be able to tailor it in a way to what the needs might be, particularly for women today, as it relates to coaching and consult and counseling. But again, being able to take that nonprofit executive management experience in working via contract with
Awesome.
organizations.
Great. So therapist for people, coach for people, executive
Yep.
coach, and then consultant for leadership development and retreats. And you're also on
Yes.
LinkedIn, so people can find you on LinkedIn,
Yes.
Michelle Latham.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll
Awesome.
give you the links for LinkedIn, Heal.me, which is where my coaching, consulting, and counseling are, and then Psychology Today specifically for the counseling.
Awesome. All right. Well, we were probably way more serious than we normally are on this particular little first podcast.
We'll have to do a redo.
Yeah, we'll have to do a redo because we usually have way more fun. But this is serious, right? Like this is like a conversation that I think we have with a lot of clients, right? And just helping them to identify with who they are and how to be the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, thank you for joining
Fantastic.
me today. Appreciate your time. And go ahead, you had one more thing to say. What you
I
got?
was just going to say, and the other thing that you and I talked about doing is actually pulling I'm going to say a retreat, but some forum by which we can bring a lot of women together and have conversations like this and really strengthen their networks and bring
Mastermind,
that raw.
mastermind group.
Yes.
We're going to do that this year, 2024. We're going to put together a women's leadership mastermind group and help support women in their leadership journey based on like our experience and then learn from other women from their experience.
Right. In non-traditional ways, doing some of the wilderness stuff and,
Yes. Getting out
there's
in
too
nature.
much seriousness in everybody's days otherwise.
No doubt about it.